Coming up, a new space launch.
And then a space launch.
Then there was a launch.
There was another launch.
And another launch.
And then another launch.
Another launch.
And then we have an interview with Spaceman Sam. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. Kind of. It was an awkward show. I'm just going to warn you. It was an awkward show. So now we'll start it. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 8.10 for Saturday, March 28th, 2015. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. Before we get into our show, I did want to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $10 or more to this episode. And if you'd like to figure out how you can help crowdfund these shows, you can do so over at patreon.com/TMRO. While there was no show last week, we did have a Patreon hangout. So if you're a patron, make sure to head over to patreon.com, click on the creations, and you'll be able to see all those hangouts. All right, we're joined today by Samuel, who is the co-founder and futurist of the Cosmic Lifestyle Corporation, which is doing some really interesting things and has a Kickstarter campaign. So first up, Sam, welcome to the show. And tell me, who is CLC?
Hello, Cosmic Lifestyle Corporation is a company founded last year, devoted to designing and marketing the future.
Designing, and what does that mean? Designing and marketing the future.
So I've been involved with the Space Tourism Society and Space Frontier Foundation for many years, and it's been a frustratingly slow experience to see new markets develop in the aerospace industry. Everything's been focused on rocket ships, robots, and satellites, which is fine, but there are other things out there that we can do to make life more comfortable for space travelers. Case in point, we keep talking about space settlements, especially in the case of Elon Musk and SpaceX wanting to go to Mars, but there's also folks talking about settling on the moon and space stations, but it's very difficult to live up there. The International Space Station right now is more of a research lab. It's not a hotel. It's not a nice place to stay, really. It's cramped. It smells. It leaks. There's all sorts of uncomfortable things around it. And there's actually going to be another private paying passenger going up, I think, in September. And she's going to have to deal with all the uncomfortable issues just living up there.
So I think you likened it to camping. You know, going to space today is like camping.
Yes.
So what are you doing to fix that?
Well, we've been doing a lot of research and talking to astronauts. Richard Gary is actually one of our advisors on the team. And we've been asking them, okay, what things are you struggling with for survival, for living, for doing things? And everything from brushing your teeth, everything from taking a shower, washing your clothes, doing dishes, cooking food, the infamous toilet, the famous toilet that on the space station. It's never been fixed or upgraded. It's still a challenge. They have all these like paper towels and other cleaning devices because you're going to make a mess. Because when you go to the bathroom, and Richard Gary has a fantastic story, he did this in some of his presentations about what happens when you are going to the bathroom and then things move in directions you don't want them to go, and you don't want to touch it, but you got to deal with the mess. And it's like, can't we fix this? Can't we make life a little bit easier than dealing with this all the time?
So where do you start, right? You're not going to start with the toilet because you don't really have access to the International Space Station. So where's Cosmic Lifestyles going to start to try to make it less of a camping experience and more of what we're used to kind of here down on Earth with creature comforts?
Yeah, so we did a lot of research and decided, you know, let's just do something fun, something attention-getting that will make people even think about the idea of making life off-world more comfortable. So we chose something that was kind of silly, kind of adventurous. We know it's not going to be a mainstream product anytime soon, at least in space, but it's a product that everybody on Earth can appreciate. So we chose cocktails.
It's right up here. Because you also have the Cosmobot, right? The little
Yes.
cocktail making robot. That's right up your alley. Actually, here's a picture of the Cosmobot. Well, more of someone enjoying a drink out of the Cosmobot and less of the Cosmobot itself. But yeah, so you've worked with cocktails for a long time. What does the actual project look like? What are you building here?
Okay, well, with the Cosmobot, I was trying to combine three of my loves: space travel, robotics, and quality cocktails. And it's actually had some very humorous results, and I got a lot of international coverage just from this idea of, whoa, robots making cocktails. That's kind of neat. Oh, and this guy's wearing a spacesuit, and there's like dry ice making it look like rocket exhaust, and this is kind of fun. So that got a lot of attention. So I think one of the challenges with the space industry today is building up interest and excitement with the general public. Because space technology, especially research and science behind the scenes, is kind of boring. It's rather dull. I mean, when you're doing fluid dynamics research or physics research the way NASA's doing it, unless you're a physicist or a scientist who's into that, not a big deal. So the research we're doing has a broader appeal, and we hope also to get the attention of corporate sponsors who would like to back up these projects, and maybe we can find an application here on Earth.
So you're going in an area that you love. You're in cocktails. What specifically are you going to build on your Kickstarter campaign?
So we have the prototypes made of the cocktail glass. The challenge is testing it. It's not cheap to test any object really in space, because you have to either do a zero-G flight, which is about $6 grand by itself. Mm-hmm. There are drop tower tests you can do at certain facilities. If we wanted to 3D print something in space, that's even more expensive, very, very difficult. So our challenge is how are we going to do this? We've done a ton of research on our own dime, trying to develop these things. We've actually talked to experts in the field of fluid dynamics in space, how to manage the fluid flow. It ends up that the group design that we're working on is the same concept that they use in fuel tanks in rocket ships. I think they call them slosh baffles. Mm-hmm. Where you don't want the fuel just shaking all around the vehicle because it'll cause vibrations, and vibrations are a bad thing typically on a rocket ship, right? So we're applying that idea to something mundane, a drink. We could...
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me about the glass, because it's really hard to see those grooves on the camera. I think there's too much light, but there is actually, oh, there we go. We've got a graphic that actually shows you the grooves inside the glass. Tell me about the technology behind the glass itself. Why are we doing those grooves? What's going on there?
So when you take away gravity, fluids act differently. There's this thing called surface tension. And with surface tension, things like to stick to each other. It becomes like a big ball or a blob. They kind of glom together. And it's hard to manage. And there's some fantastic videos on YouTube of NASA. In fact, if you do a YouTube search for GoPro NASA space water bubble, you see this fantastic image of the astronauts putting a camera inside a giant water bubble, and it sticks. The camera's inside the water bubble itself. And then when someone grabs the water bubble, all of a sudden the liquid just gloms over his fingers like a blob. So you have this weird environment of water acting totally differently, like slime, I guess. It's really hard to explain. And how do you control it? And not just in the case of drinking, but also in the case of accidents, spills, washing clothes, doing laundry, doing dishes, things like that. How do you manage that fluid flow in such a weird situation? And a fairly simple solution, besides the NASA solution, which of course is squeeze bags, and that works pretty well too. You got a squeeze bag, you got the tube, you have the cap, that locks it into place. That's fine. Then when you unlock the cap, then you can squeeze the bag and you get the water coming out. But liquid likes to go from one surface to another. So like from one hard surface to another hard surface, and they touch, and then the liquid will just like glom onto it. So what we're trying to do is take advantage of that feature of surface tension with these grooves. And it's hard to see in this imagery, of course, but we designed the glass so that you inject the liquid from the bottom. There's a one-way valve that we put at the bottom of this glass. We created a drink machine. It's kind of like I guess you can call it the Cosmobot 2.0. It's like an advanced version of the Cosmobot that can manage liquids in a weightless environment, that will use a syringe to inject the liquid into the bottom, slowly go up the stem, and then fill all the grooves inside the glass. and the grooves go to one point, and this is where you sip it like a straw. Your lips become the top half of the straw where the grooves are, and then sucks everything in one direction. In theory, as long as the liquids are like at the groove level, we can keep control of the liquid. And you now have an open container where you can smell the aroma of your coffee or your tea or your orange juice or your cocktail and enjoy an open drink in space.
Now, obviously, we're on 1G right now, so if you were to use that glass, all the liquid would move down. I mean, it would work like a regular glass, but it seems a shame to have that glass. Are you able to actually use one of those glasses now, like here on Earth, as a sample, or are they all prototype? You know what I mean?
We can do it right now. I can put water in this glass right now, and I'll show you a very interesting feature of this glass with the deep grooves. Give me a second here. Just a real quick demo with water, and then I can move on to bigger things if you want. So I'm filling this up with water, and the neat thing is, depending on how much liquids is in there, I can actually hold the glass. Whoop, little spillage because it was kind of full, but the more you drink, the steeper the angle of the glass can be and not spill. So it's actually a spill-resistant glass at a certain point. So I can test that on Earth right now. And I can also sip it, and it'll still give the same effect of sucking here like a straw, and it comes out in one direction, which is where your mouth is.
So you mentioned parabolic flights are expensive. You know, zero-G flights are expensive. You know, going to space is even more expensive. So how do you test this here on Earth? How are you going to actually make sure that it works? Because you've got 1G sitting down here. Exactly.
So we've been talking with Portland State University. There's a professor, Mark Weisslogel, who's a pretty amazing physicist. He knows the mathematics behind fluid dynamics and dealing with wicking angles and things like that. And so we learned a lot from him, plus our own research on fluid dynamics in a weightless environment. We're going to use the drop tower at Portland State University to get a series of tests. It's a 102-foot tall drop tower in their engineering building, and we can do up to 6 drops per hour there. We get 2 seconds of zero gravity there in that brief time. But with a high-speed camera, you can get a lot of information.
So you've got a Kickstarter campaign going on right now. You can hit that over if you search Kickstarter for Cosmic Lifestyle, I think you'll actually find the campaign. Here it is. You've got, 4 days to go, and you're about 1/10 of the way there. So chances are, realistically, there's always a chance, but realistically, you're probably not going to make it for the end of the campaign. So what do you do next? Are you going to try to relaunch the campaign? Are you going to do something different, change the rewards? What's your plan moving forward?
Well, this is our first time doing a Kickstarter, and my God, it was hard. A lot of lessons learned. There is a chance we may restart it late in the near future with an updated system, so now we know how to focus on the marketing and getting the rewards to make sense at the $100 reward level and less, and the goals will adjust. But one of the nicest things about the Kickstarter campaign was the attention. We've been trying to get our message across that we're trying to improve life off-world, and some of this can benefit on Earth, and we're getting a lot of attention through all sorts of media sources, Fox News, Time Magazine, Air and Space Smithsonian, all sorts of media have been coming to interview us. Discovery Channel is very interested in us. We've had some really good coverage and potential sponsors. And one of our goals was to find corporate sponsors that would back this idea up, and they can put their name on it, get some branding going on, and then we can actually do our tests.
So speaking of that, we've got some questions in the chat room, and this one comes from Tawicked, who asks, weight is important when it comes to launching stuff in space, so why are you doing plastic and not titanium or lightweight alloy?
Well, the theory is we're going to 3D print these things. Just like in Star Trek, where they would you have the replicator and you create the glasses and the drinks as you need it. These glasses won't be created until you're in space, and if there's a cocktail party, you say, hey, I need 5 glasses, let the replicator make it. That may sound like science fiction, but there is a company called Made in Space that has a prototype 3D printer in orbit, and we're good friends with them. They're really cool guys. They have a production model coming out in October up to the space station, and our philosophy is if you don't need it, don't print it. But when you do need it, print it, and then you'll be ready.
So you could actually make a metal one. If it's 3D printed, then you could use direct laser metal sintering and make a titanium glass if you wanted to, but it kind of defeats the purpose because it's already in space. Why make a metal glass in space at that point, I assume, right?
Exactly. They don't have a laser sintering 3D printing ability for space use yet. There's a lot of outgassing issues one has to deal with, and it's kind of dangerous, just a little dangerous. So, I mean, one day some company, maybe made in space, maybe some other company will send up a metal sintering 3D printer for the space station, but there's a lot of issues you have to work on to get that to happen.
So Destructor 1701 asks, could space cup theory be applied to space toilets, kind of going back to some of the other issues in space?
Aha! So now, I'm glad you brought that up. So this groove technology can be applied to any shape object. We chose cocktail glasses because they're sexy. They get attention, they're really neat. I could have done a simple drinking cup. Not as sexy, but it would do the job. Like that there. That is the image you're seeing on the screen is a sample like a shot glass we were designing. Same type of groove technology, but just a different shape container. So for toilets, for washing systems, these are ways we can use that same groove technology to all sorts of water-based devices, whether they're washing machines, clothes, dishwashers, toilets maybe, who knows.
BZ Wing Zero has asked, are you familiar with the Zero-G coffee cup that astronaut Don Petit created on the International Space Station? Was it inspiration for your design?
The answer is yes. We were trying to decide where we're going to go with our projects, and there were a lot of different options. But once we saw Don Petit create the the coffee cup design using that wonderful teardrop shape, and we learned all sorts of things about wicking angles, that's where we got our inspiration to go further.
So this is an interesting question about the design. It asks if you're doing a, do you have to print it all at once? This is from To Wicked Again. Do you print the whole glass in one sitting, or do you print it in pieces and then assemble it on orbit?
That's a very good question. It depends. It depends on the type of glass, how large you're going to make it, and so on. This particular model here was printed on Earth in 2 parts because of this is a very complicated piece. It took a long time to build. And so sometimes, depending on the size of the printer and the print area, we may have to build it in 2 parts. We have a tiny version here of the same glass that we got printed in one part, and it only took a couple hours to make. And it depends on the printer and the size of the print dimensions that are available on the 3D printer itself. I mean, these glasses are kind of big size-wise. There are a lot of printers that are, much more expensive printers that can handle much larger sizes. Once again, depends on the printer that's out there and available.
So we were talking before the show about the different models that you have, and one of the things that you brought up was this is way more expensive than people probably think it is. Can you talk about some of the prices of those different models that you have, how much that actually costs to build? Yeah,
most of the people here in the audience probably are familiar with MakerBots, the hobbyist 3D printers, which are nice printers, but they can't handle the level of detail that are in our glasses. So our first prototype that we made was on the Stratasys Objet printer. This is a $1,000 print job right here. And it took about almost 20 hours to make. Our next generation one, actually this is number 34, we've actually done several different designs, but this one here is on a mid-range printer at the highest quality. This was a couple $100s to make. So one of our challenges with the Kickstarter campaign was, how do we get a full-size glass to you, the Kickstarter backer, at a reasonable price, and also, add a cushion in for rewards and all that type of fulfillment and all that. Very difficult for us to do. And eventually we got around to the idea of, well, let's do a mini one. This is just done in about an hour or two and print it up, and we can charge much less on the Kickstarter.
Matt Clark asks, why would this design be practical compared to current cups? And we're air quoting cups. The only cup I've ever seen is actually from astronaut Don Petit, where he had that kind of the container that he made with the tape. Are you familiar with any other cups on station? No, the challenge up there in space, like I said, is that liquids are hard to manage. And the easiest way to manage it is through squeeze bags or toothpaste tube-like objects, because that's what they are. So you have everything in a solid container with a straw, and that's been the standard since, I think, the 60s, really, for how you dispense liquids in space.
A very interesting story. You probably heard about Lavazza, the espresso machine that's up on the space station now.
I hadn't, but I'm sure CARIANN has.
So speaking of creature comforts in space, one of the astronauts complained, actually a couple astronauts complained, that they can't smell their coffee. That was number one. Number two, they can't make any decent coffee up there. So Don Pettit created that zero-gravity coffee cup design so you have an open area so you actually can smell your coffee. Because as you know, when you're drinking something like that, you want to enjoy the aroma of fresh roasted beans and things like that, and you can't do that with a squeeze tube. The Lavazza ISS Espresso, that's what they call it, is an Italian company. Lavazza is a famous espresso machine company. They launched an actual espresso machine to the space station, I think via SpaceX's Dragon vehicle in October. And it was a huge advancement in making life comfortable up there. Now people can actually drink decent coffee, decent espressos, and all that. But guess how they're drinking it? Guess.
Are they still squeeze bag? I mean, he figured out the cup. I mean, what? I have no idea.
Heat-resistant squeeze bags.
So you still can't smell your coffee then, right? Because
no,
it gets put into a squeeze bag. You can't smell that.
No, you can't.
So
you still, yeah.
Really, we're not even at the level of camping yet, is what I'm hearing from you, right? I mean, because in camping, you still have coffee, and you can at least smell your coffee. On orbit operations, you're not even up to that level. It's super anti-creature comfort. It's very, very painful, it sounds like, for humans to actually be in space for an extended amount of time, much like the 1 year in space campaign that just went up there.
Yeah, you have astronauts who are highly trained people, cosmonauts who are highly trained people who are used to being in survival mode, and that's what you are up there on the space station. You have wires and cables everywhere. If you bump into something, you might short circuit. I mean, you've seen the videos on the ISS. I mean, there's stuff everywhere, and you've got garbage that's wrapped up in the bags, hiding in the corners, and it's I'm not even sure how to describe it, but it is a very messy place. And there's almost no privacy. I mean, except for the little booths that they give you as your bedroom area. It's extremely noisy. The astronauts complain about vibrations all the time. They have to wear earplugs because all the machinery is vibrating and humming all the time, and so you have this like ambient noise issue going on throughout the entire station. So all these little things I'm looking into, and if we were on Earth with the situation, you would have architects and designers looking at every aspect of living and how to improve these elements so that it's actually a fun place to be instead of kind of like, I gotta be here, it's the only thing we got, we have to work.
Because, I mean, our core community all wants to go to space. It's going to be a while before we're able to get up there, and I assume that a lot of it's going to be suborbital flight at first, which will be very different than what you're describing. But eventually, I'd love to go to a space hotel. And yeah, that would really, I mean, bathroom, how you're drinking your coffee in the morning, just how you're living. You kind of want it to not suck when you're up there. So yeah, I can totally see where you need to start working on these things now before we start flying the space hotels, which will hopefully happen. Happily, that's combining words. Hopefully happen sooner rather than later. All right, so a couple more questions, and then since we've got you here, and you are the maker of the Cosmobot, and you offered, I thought it would be fun for you to make an actual cocktail on air, because why not, right? That would be really freaking cool. Now, before you go to do that, a couple more questions. You said you had a relationship with Made in Space, who has a 3D printer up on the space station. Does that 3D printer have the resolution necessary for you to print one of your cups? And if so, couldn't they just send the file up and print it?
In theory, yes. We actually based our designs on the limitations for the print area for the Made in Space printer. So in theory, this design could be done on the International Space Station.
Cool. So it's just a question then of creating a priority for that and having them actually. I assume there's a lot of politics involved in actually being able to use.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the reality is this glass in its current form will never be printed on the space station.
Why is that?
Because NASA is a political entity subject to the whims of Congress, and They have a reputation to uphold for being very squeaky clean. And I've talked to a number of astronauts. They refuse to talk to me, mainly because it's a reputation thing. The idea of drinking in space, alcohol in space, implies bad things. So
you just need the Russian side. You need the Russian segment to do it.
Yes, and in fact, there are stories that the doctors, the Russian doctors, prescribe cognac to the cosmonauts because it's a medicinal, and the Russians need a little something to keep them going.
Well, could you change your plan slightly? So you've got a cocktail glass right now, but it doesn't have to be a cocktail glass. It could be a coffee cup. I mean, it can be anything. You've got a cup. Couldn't you send one of those up?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can choose any type of shape. It could be a shot glass. It could be a coffee mug. It could be any type of design. I can have something smaller that will use less material. This does use a lot of material in the printer, and it's a bit wasteful. There's some support material needed to actually make all this happen. But a small coffee cup shape, sure. You know, cylindrical or rectangular or whatever, and have the groove system inside there, and have an injection system for the bottom. That will work, and we can use a lot less material.
I think what you're trying to do is very cool, and I think it's something that not a lot of people have thought of. And you're starting with a cocktail glass, and I think some people may look at that and go, I don't understand why they need a cocktail glass in space, but it's more than just a cocktail glass in space. It's liquid flow management in space, which would be all of your things. And you mentioned even being able to smell your coffee in the morning is something that you don't think of, but would end up being a very big deal. And I would love to actually see your Kickstarter campaign be a success. Now, I've said this in After Dark before. I don't know if I've actually said it on the show, so I'll say it right here, right now, and that is for anyone who is a patron of Tomorrow who is watching the show and says, yeah, this is kind of cool, except that I'm already contributing to Tomorrow and I don't have a lot more money to give to other Kickstarter campaigns, you should totally take the money from Tomorrow and give it to campaigns that you believe in. Maybe it's this Kickstarter campaign, maybe it's something else. Whatever it may be, we're all trying to do the same thing, and that is get humanity out to the cosmos. And if that means that for 1 month you're not paying Tomorrow, you're instead doing some sort of Kickstarter campaign, you should absolutely do that. If you're worried about getting your name in the show, don't worry about that. Just tell me what you say. I've supported this campaign. It doesn't have to be this one. Any campaign. I've supported this campaign. Would you mind leaving my name in the show? Just email me and we'll make that happen, because all ships rise with the tide. So we totally want to see your campaign happen. I would love it if the citizens of Tomorrow were able to rally and actually make it happen. Realistically, you're pretty far back. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but you know, it would be fun to try. So that's my rally cry for the citizens of Tomorrow. All right, having said that, we've got you here. You've got the Cosmobot. You're known for making cocktails. Let's make a cocktail on air.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your support, Ben. Every little bit counts. We really like to appreciate hearing from everyone who is interested in promoting space on all different levels. And even if you don't drink cocktails, it's the vision. It's the idea about life in space, making things comfortable for current and future space travelers. Absolutely.
It's absolutely about the vision and more than just putting humans in space, being able to do it comfortably and repeatably as well. All right, yes. So let's get a cocktail going. What are you able to? You mentioned you had like a martini, a vodka martini.
Yeah, we'll just do a simple vodka martini. I have all the ingredients here. I've got a certain, I got a little vodka right here. I've got a little bit of vermouth.
Ah, vermouth. Vermouth.
Oops. And some bitters. Just one shot. That's all you need, and it takes it to another level. Even have lemon. I have a lemon as well. So give me just a minute to mix things up, and then I'll have a cocktail for you, and I'll drink it from this glass.
Well, yeah, guide us through it. I mean, let's make this happen. Okay. Yeah.
All right. All right. So you always start with a shaker. And by the way, I kind of became an accidental bartender by doing all this stuff. I don't claim to be any good at real bartending. One of the other guys on my team, his name is Russell Davies. He's a celebrity bartender. He's a professional, and he goes all over the world doing demonstrations and promos, doing real bartending tricks. Me, I need robots to help me out.
But robots are cool.
Yeah, I know. So here we go. We have the little shaker. I just happen to have a bunch of ice here. How convenient, because that's always important to have some ice. So I put the ice in there like that. Good. And now we begin. I I recommend these guys. They're really good for measuring cups. You can get have all the different levels in there. Pretty useful. And then we take the vodka. Do about 2 ounces of vodka. And by the way,
what kind of vodka are you using?
It's called Tito's. It's a very good brand. I think it's like 6 times distilled or something like that. Very nice. So I'm going to pour the vodka in there. And then the jokes about the vermouths. By the way, do you know the difference about the story about the gin martini versus the vodka martini?
So we talked about it before the show, but I think it was an interesting conversation. I think you should say it again.
So until the early 1960s, gin martinis, that was it. The martinis were made with gin. But then came Ian Fleming and the James Bond stories, and of course the James Bond movies, where in the Ian Fleming novels, James Bond is always ordering his vodka martini shaken, not stirred. Mm-hmm. And of course, that became the new standard throughout the world for martinis, is having a vodka. Which the reality is, gin is the preferred method, because gin has some really beautiful aromas and botanicals behind it that takes your cocktail another step further. So I'm just going to use a small amount of vermouth. And the joke's about like a spritzing or a non-existent vermouth. I mean, it's personal preference. I'm just putting like a half an ounce, because it just adds a nice little aroma to it. And then, let's see, pour this guy in. And let's see. So I'm going to use Angostura bitters, 1 shot, because you don't want to go too crazy. Bitters are really neat. They're very powerful. And just do 1 shot, or you're gonna. It takes over the entire drink, so you got to be careful. So we got all that, and then we have a shaker. Here we go. Cocktails in space. All right. Alrighty. Hopefully that's enough shaking. And I'll pour what I can in this glass right here.
For anyone who contributes to the Kickstarter campaign, I think it's $400 gets you a glass. Does it have it has a base that you can at least set it on for 1G usage?
Yes, we'll have a display base that goes with it. The ones that we'll give away, we'll have a way to just stick it into the hole at the bottom and then have it'll be a simple stand. Cool. So you have it for display purposes. One thing I'm missing, of course, is the lemon. And of course, the challenge is for something that doesn't stand up is how do I keep it going? I'll do this. 1 moment. And it's good to have a lemon and a lemon spritzer here. 1 moment as I try this. Oh, wait. Let me try this right here.
Actually, this is a good question from Citizen Kane. Where do you get the ice on from on the ISS? Do they already have ice up there? You just open the door for a bit?
Good question. Good question. Obviously, you don't want to do that. So the reality is you want to create a machine that does all the hard work, and that's where the Cosmobot 2.0 comes in, where you will have either a Peltier board or something, or maybe a chill copper tubing around the syringe, and so we'll basically mix and chill at the same time in the drink machine before it even gets to the glass. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of research on how do you chill this stuff in space. Because ice cubes, you can make things freeze real quickly by opening the door, but other bad things happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so give me 1 moment here. So I get you basically have to do this with the lemon over the thing, and then you get the nice lemon aroma. And you think, big deal, but have you ever been to a tiki bar?
CARIANN? Yeah, I think so, yes.
So
if I have, it was a long time ago.
So I recommend going to tiki bars. You guys are in LA. Fabulous place down there is called Tiki Teas. Highly recommend it. They make deadly cocktails. The difference between tiki cocktails and regular cocktails is it's chemistry. They do some really complicated things with their drink making, and there's a wide variety of flavors and aromas that come out of them. And obviously I'm wearing my space tiki shirt. I got my little rocket ships and stuff all over here, so you could commemorate it. So now I have my bit of essence of lemon on top of the martini here, and it's ready to drink.
There you go, Space Cocktail. Spaceman Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully your Kickstarter campaign works. Where can people go for more information on what you're doing?
They can go to cosmiclifestyle.com. There's a link there to the Kickstarter page, or just go to Kickstarter and look for Space Cocktail Glass. Should be easy to find.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for your time. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, lots of launches. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into launch news, I'd like to thank all of the patrons of Tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $5 to this episode. We are a crowdfunded show, and you can figure out how you can help contribute to Tomorrow by going over to patreon.com/TMRO. And thank you, of course, to all of the producers who helped make all of this stuff happen. We're reaching new great heights. The store is coming along. We're just trying to work on getting some additional California stuff that I need in place to, like legal stuff, get in place so I can actually order the shirts and put them into the Amazon store. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some launch news this week. First up, on March 18th at 22:05 Coordinated Universal Time, Express AM7 launches via Proton. Here you go. Maybe. That's a fantastic still image of AM7. There we go. Now, this is a 15-year mission that's going to beam television programming, broadband connectivity, and other services to Europe, Russia, Africa, and India. That's the 403rd flight of a Proton rocket since 1965. It's the second flight of 2015, and the next Proton launch will be scheduled for April 6th, and that's going to be Express AM8. This, of course, was Express AM7. So there you go. Moving along. Next launch.
Yeah, Delta IV launch. This is what it's launching is not really all that exciting. It's a GPS satellite, but the launch itself was kind of pretty. So here's some launch stuff.
3, 2, we have ignition of the RS-68 engine, and we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the 9th GPS-2F satellite for the United States Air Force.
Maybe it was that engine, maybe it wasn't.
System provides
I'm guessing
worldwide
that's how it
positioning,
feels when you're
navigation,
on
and
it.
timing service
Did they
for
go
military and civilian users.
Did they go to an animation right off the pad?
Kind of. Well, this one, if I remember correctly, this one had a lot of fog around it.
Ah.
So there was, anyway, so GPS satellite, of course, benefiting the U.S. military operations and civilian society as a whole, I suppose. This is GPS-2F9 that will replace the GPS-2A22 satellite, originally launched aboard the Delta II-22, all those twos, on August 30th of 1993. This is, as Ben likes to say, the 371st launch for a Delta rocket since 1960, and the 29th Delta IV vehicle.
There you go, Space Mike. What have we got for our next launch?
The next launch that took place was a DNEPR rocket, which was launched by Kosmotras, which is a joint company between Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. We talked about earlier in one of the space pods about how the DNEPR rocket is one of the rockets that were suffering due to the Ukrainian civil war. And Kosmotras, the CEO of that company, has stated that they will be able to continue launching the DNEPR for at least the contractual agreements that they have for the rest of the year, which would be for 3 launches for this remaining year. And the footage that you're seeing on screen is the night launch of this DNEPR rocket, and it launched the KOMPSAT 3A satellite, which was built for South Korea. The Korean aerospace, I always mess up their name, KARI is the acronym for it. Anyway, this satellite, the KOMPSAT 3A launcher is, or satellite, excuse me, is an optical satellite that is going to be gathering precision optical pictures of the ground that will be able to give them good weather data and will be able to help for agriculture, for South Korea, and they're also going to be kind of renting it out to some commercial customers because of the orbit that it has, will be able to benefit other people as well. So that's a pretty cool launch, and very cool to see the DNEPR continuing to fly for at least a little while longer. All
right, thanks, Mike. Let's move along to the next launch that we have in our sequence. I know. This is a IGS Optical 5 via an H-2A rocket launched in Japan. Boom, here you go. Now, if this looks like it's not official coverage, that's because it's not. They did not officially have a webcast for this. This was done by some amateur videographers, rocket launch recorders. I don't know what to call them. But just right off the pad, that's in the 202 configuration, which means that it had two strap-on solid rocket motors. They launched a surveillance satellite, so this is a military payload, most likely why they didn't do a live webcast. It's the 4th launch in 6 months. Now, this is going to track military activity in North Korea and other locations around the world. This is the 28th flight of Japan's H-2A rocket since 2001. It's the 22nd straight success of the H-2A. And the next launch from Japan is going to be the more powerful H-2B, and that's going to be on August 17th. And the H-2B, if I remember right, it just like shoots. It's just like boosh right off the pad. It makes that noise, boosh. There you go. All right. Now, all right. So there were a ton of launches that we missed, but then Soyuz. So you'll take the first Soyuz launch.
Yeah. So March 27th, there was a Soyuz launch at 1942 UTC. This is the one that most people were talking about, although again, we love all launches here.
Attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top, et décollage.
The Soyuz rockets really contemplate life before they lift off.
Well, look at that thing.
Really, the engines are firing for a good, like, 10 seconds.
This is Soyuz TMA-16M. It held astronaut Scott Kelly and then Russian cosmonauts Mikhail Kornienko and Gennady Padalka. I'm probably pronouncing one of those incorrectly. I apologize. This came from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And as part of the one-year crew, Kelly and Kornienko will return to Earth on Soyuz TMA-18M in March of 2016.
And the hashtag 1 year in space, if you're on Twitter, that's the hashtag everyone has been using, which is why we used it in the show banner as well. 1 year in space. Although not the first time that has happened. I believe it is the first time it has happened on purpose.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
All right, the next Soyuz launch. Space Mike, take us away.
So the next Soyuz launch was actually done by Arianespace, and that was the Soyuz STB configuration. And what it was launching was a pair of GPS satellites for Europe's navigation network, not the GPS satellite that the Delta rocket launched for the US Air Force. And for the European GPS satellites, they're calling them I always forget the name of this, the Galileo. That's right, the Galileo constellation of communication satellites. And this footage, we actually played this just a moment ago, but this footage...
So wait. Because we had two Soyuz launches, we played the wrong one for the other one, right? That's fantastic.
Right. That footage is actually of the launch in Kourou, French Guiana, and I'm not sure where the other footage is for...
well, let's watch the other footage. All right, so now that we know that the footage is backwards, we'll watch the other footage for your mission coverage. They're both Soyuz rockets, so there you go. All right, roll the other footage. There you go. It's still gonna like launch the engines and 10 seconds later lift off. So, I should have noticed that because ESA has the banner in the upper right-hand corner. There you go. So here's the launch footage.
Oh man! So something that's really cool about this particular rocket, not the one that you see on screen, the TMA one has, of course, the launch abort tower, but the one that is launching in French Guiana is really close to the equator, and it has a Fregat upper stage to be able to get the satellites into their intended orbits. And for the Galileo constellation of GPS satellites, this is the third and fourth functional GPS satellites for Europe's navigation network. They're planning to have 30 satellites in total for this entire constellation, and it's going to hopefully be able to get done.
This is what happens when you revert. You know, it's a lot, dude. We do these shows live. This is what happens. But if I may, so I know we just interrupted you. Why does the Russian cosmonaut get an iPad and the Americans have paper? Did anyone else notice that? Look at that. They get all the cool technology.
Maybe that was choice.
Because he's the pilot and he's the commander. That's his captain's pad, man.
That's his captain's pad. All right. I'm sorry, Mike. I interrupted. Obviously, this is the wrong footage. Flip your 2 Soyuz launches around. The rockets look about the same. There you go. But keep going. Oh. What a great problem! Hang on, what a great problem to have. There are so many launches that we actually flip-flopped the one that was supposed to be on air.
I think somebody in the chat room said hashtag 2015 problems.
All right, anyhow, keep going, Mike.
Oh man, but the only way that I can really tell the difference is all the manned spacecraft have the launch abort tower on the top of the Soyuz, and all the other automated ones for the Progress or for any of their satellites, whether it be commercial or for Russia, just have the payload fairing, and so that's the only way that I can tell the difference. But as far as like the upper stages go, I have to look really close to tell the difference between a lot of the upper stages, and really you can only see the second stage, and most of the time the third upper stage is concealed by the payload fairings anyway. But both of these launches were very successful, and I also wanted to note that the launch of the Japanese rocket, the DNEPR rocket, and the ULA Delta IV rocket all launched on the same day. So that is very cool to have a triple launch in one day.
There is another way to tell which one's which, and that is the other footage actually had the ArianeSpace logo and the ArianeSpace countdown in the footage. I should have noticed that when I put it in the rundown.
Let's not even talk about like the commentary, the actual commentary of the... I was just going to skip right over
the
it,
rumble in the Amazon jungle. Wait, where did that launch from?
That's okay.
You know, I'd edit it out, but it takes some of the fun out of the show. All right, moving right along. Speaking of like back-to-back launches, earlier today, March 28th at 11:49 UTC, the PSLV, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Here you go.
3, 2, 1,
RC ignition.
0. That's 1.
Now their microphones are way far away, so you don't get the audio for a little bit here. This was the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, ERNIS. Those satellite systems have been in development since 2006, although the first satellite did reach orbit in 2013. The constellation will call for 3 geostationary satellites and 4 more in an inclined geosynchronous orbit. This will be the first satellite to be located at the 111.75 degree east station in that inclined orbit that we talked about. Expected to have its operational lifespan is going to be around 10 years or so. This is actually fairly hard footage to come by, although it did launch like just a few hours ago today. So there you go. We have now caught you up. You're welcome, Internet. We've very poorly caught you up on the rocket launches from the last 2 weeks.
Caught
and
up,
all
you're
of their
just a little confused. It's
all their
fine.
payloads. Oh man, I love the Soyuz thing. All right, let's talk about ULA.
So, ULA is having a little trouble naming their rocket / no, they really want you to feel like you've been included in this entire process.
Why the hate, dude?
I don't know.
It's kind of cool. You get to do this. You can.
This is very cool because currently this rocket is called the Next Generation Launch System. So ULA is asking for your input.
The Niggles.
It's a terrible name. Asking for your input on what to name. There's a really great graphic here. You can.
That's the actual site, right? So you can go
it's
to their
ulalaunch.com/rocket vote.
Yeah, it used to only be the first 3. They added 2 more by popular demand.
Yeah, it had been Eagle or Freedom or Galaxy 1.
Galaxy 1, yes.
And then most recently they've added Vulcan or Zeus.
Now Vulcan I'm kind of digging on because of
it's a nice tribute and there's all of that.
Zeus I'm not digging because it reminds me too much of a Maston vehicle.
There's pros and cons I think to each one.
So
honestly.
Eagle has no pros and only cons. Eagle is not allowed.
And it's a bird of prey, just like Falcon.
Yeah, there are only cons to Eagle. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
Freedom.
Freedom, okay.
Freedom lifting off the pad, but it's so heavy-handed.
It's so heavy-handed. So those two, Galaxy 1 sounds kind of cool.
Sure, except it sounds like Spaceship 1.
Nah, I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, they really are not that creative, are they?
No, and the worst part is that the first three names came from a poll of their like 3,500 employees, 3,400 employees, something right in there, and these were the top three favorites, and then eventually by sort of internet popular demand, there were the Vulcan and
the internet
Zeus,
was like, these all suck. Do something better.
Were added, and that's great, but again, it's. Vulcan is the only one that I find even remotely inspiring.
Yeah, except that I like Galaxy 1, except that Vulcan is the name of an engine as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. You can go vote.
Yes,
whichever
please
one
go vote.
Whichever one you like. I'm digging on Galaxy 1 and Vulcan. You're kind of just digging on. What about you, Space Mike? Which one do you like?
I'm not sure. I mean, if I had to pick one of them, I don't know, because Freedom reminds me of ATK's Liberty rocket.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
Right.
Galaxy 1, same thing. Eagle, I don't like that because it's, Falcon.
I'm so sorry, you guys. Vulcan instead of...
Vulcan.
Awesome. Instead of Vulcan? Maybe I'm wrong. I apologize. I looked at it very quickly and I typed it like 4 different times. I could be wrong. But wait, no, what's the graphic say? Vulcan. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
that's right from their that is a screenshot from their
Vulcan,
website.
Okay.
Right there. Says Vulcan.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Sorry.
There you go.
I like that they're going into the whole Zeus thing, though, because all the other rockets had, like, the Greek, like, gods connotations to them. Atlas, Delta, Thor. I mean, that's a different, religion or whatever. But, I like keeping with those sort of names, big names like Gemini and Apollo and Mercury, I like sticking with that.
So you're going for Zeus.
Kind of, but at the same time, it does remind me of that Maston lander they want to do with the Centaur stage. So.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Anyway, this is scheduled for this first flight sometime in 2019. It'll replace the Atlas V and Delta IV rockets, which should be retired in the early 20s.
All right, here's the deal. Citizens of tomorrow, here's what you should do. Write in, ignore their list. Write in the name you think it should be. Go to the comments.
Colbert.
I don't care where it is, right? Colbert, the Colbert rocket.
It seems to me. Oh, sorry.
That would be fantastic. Write it in the comments, right? YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want. Let us know what you actually think it should be. Ignore their list, and then if we ever are able to actually get Tori Bruno on the show, I'm not sure yet if that's
We're not
happen.
making any promises.
I will
but we
say,
are trying.
dude, here's your better list. Use this, and we'll see. He's actually a pretty cool guy. He seems to be willing to be like, all right, cool. You guys want to do that? Let's do that. Right. He's not locked into just one thing. All right, Mike. NASA's asteroid. Oh, you did a space pod on this actually. Tell us about your space pod.
That's right. I'll try to give you a shorter version of what I talked about in the space pod. But NASA's been working on the Asteroid Redirect Mission, or ARM, and they've been mulling over lots of different proposals and ideas of how to do this. And the way that they've selected doing it is sending a smaller spacecraft with some kind of robotic arms that would be able to grab a small boulder off of a much larger asteroid. And the previous plan that most of the pictures of got out, for trying to promote the NASA Asteroid Redirect Mission was of the other method to grab a kind of smaller asteroid with a bag. But I actually think that this method is better because later on in this video animation, we'll see a demonstration of where after they grab the small boulder that they want to later bring back to lunar orbit and have astronauts go and visit and take samples from, before doing that, this robotic spacecraft, after it grabs that boulder, would assume a halo orbit. And if you assume a halo orbit in just the right direction, you can actually influence the movement of this much larger asteroid. And so a lot of people, a lot of the criticism that NASA has gotten since they've announced this has been that, you're only getting a small boulder, what happened to be able to redirect an asteroid? And this is actually a better way of doing it because we can move much larger asteroids instead of just the smaller sized ones. And so I really like this idea, and it actually kind of is more like the NASA Asteroid Redirect Mission mod that they made for Kerbal Space Program, where you actually have to use a claw to grab the different asteroids. So I think that it's kind of funny how they released that mod like a year ago, and now the official decision is to go back to using a claw for this asteroid redirect mission. So
because we all learn from KSP. That's how everyone figures out where we're going to be.
Duh.
That's right.
And then you've got the claw part, and then you've also got the asteroid, the astronaut part as well.
That's right. The spacecraft itself will have a docking port that an Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle will be able to go to and dock with, and then astronauts will be able to come out and have kind of a retractable ladder, and then they would crawl up to where the handholds are on the robotic spacecraft, go over to where the asteroid is, or the boulder from that asteroid, collect a couple of samples, and they were only going to collect a small amount of samples anyway, no matter which version of this plan they decided to use. And by doing this, they would be able to bring those samples back to Earth so that they could be studied and possibly see if we could do more missions in the future. Some of these larger asteroids that they're looking at as potential candidates for this mission could be those high metal asteroids that could have lots of nickel and iron. You know, some of them are more silicate based, but you know, the ones that have a lot of those, you know, precious metals are the ones that we really want to go after. You know, not even to mention, you know, if there's any gold or platinum or anything else like that there. So I think it's a really good idea. I'm glad that this plan is moving forward. And a lot of people forget that this is the direction that President Obama gave to NASA back in 2010, was to cancel going to the moon and go to an asteroid, send humans to an asteroid as a stepping stone towards going to Mars. And another cool thing about this is the spacesuits that the astronauts are planning on wearing is going to be testing their next generation spacesuits, which they're planning on using for future Mars architecture and possibly even lunar architecture anyway. So even though it may not seem like much that they're only gathering samples from a small boulder, they're actually accomplishing a lot of things and accomplishing a lot of firsts. And I really hope that this mission actually does take place. Right now, the only scheduled missions for Orion is the actual crewed flight test of the Orion launching on a space launch system. We already saw the uncrewed flight test of an Orion on a Delta IV Heavy. There's going to be one more uncrewed Orion on the first launch of the space launch system. And then after that, they haven't quite decided yet as to what the next missions are going to be for astronauts on Orion and Space Launch System. So with this plan moving forward for the asteroid redirect mission, it gives NASA planners more of an opportunity to make the decisions they need to make for how to move forward for this mission.
All right, before we go to break, just a quick note that Delta IV flight that just flew, that is the last time that Delta IV is going to use an RS-68 engine. Moving forward, they're going to be using the RS-68A engine, which is an enhanced version of that same engine. It's going to have 702,000 pounds of thrust at sea level liftoff. That is an increase of 39,000 pounds. Here's a picture of the 68A. And Dutta, we'll just skip the video. There's a test video. You can search YouTube for it that shows you what it all looks like. It's going to help reduce the number of configurations of the Delta IV rocket. By adding this additional thrust, they'll be able to not need maybe some solid boosters or other add-ons to the vehicle, which means that they'll be able to streamline their production facility, which will hopefully help reduce the cost of the Delta IV. Good. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from last week's show. Stay tuned. Be right back. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into comments from last week's show, obviously our shout out to the patrons of Tomorrow who helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are our Patreon Plus subscribers. These are the people who are going to be getting a copy of After Dark as soon as it is available online, generally about 24 hours after the live show itself. So everyone on this list will be getting a copy of that. You get access to our Google Hangouts, get your name in the show, and a bunch of other rewards. But oh no, there's more. There are people, I'm sorry, I didn't even mention, this is a $2.50 or and above is in this list. But if you want to contribute to the show, and maybe you don't have $200, if you want to contribute $250, I'm not going to stop you. But if you don't have $2.50 per show, even a penny will get you into the show. That's right. We have our Patreon subscribers who contribute 1 penny to $2.49. That's this list right here. You get access to our Google Hangouts and a few other cool things as well. Thank you to all of our patrons to help make this show happen. You can find more information on how you can help crowdfund the show over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, there we go. I wanted to see when he would cut. Because really what I was like, was he gonna? Let's get started with some comments from last week's show. Hit us up with the first one.
All right. Well, this one comes from G1G1G4.
Give for.
Yeah, I guess.
Guy for?
I'm just reading what's in front of me. At tomorrow at Pomerantz. What about Virgin Space Hotel with orbital shuttles as a next big thing?
So I think this is actually this was a question for William Pomerantz, who was on the show, our last show. What about using, because they've got a suborbital vehicle. He talked about being able to go and do an orbital vehicle. What about doing a space hotel? And I think right now, the company that's going to be doing space hotels, at first at least, will be Bigelow. But it's interesting because Virgin Group does have their hotel line that they're starting as well.
Yeah, they just started in Chicago, didn't they?
I think so, something like that. So it'd be kind of cool if they purchased like a Bigelow station, flew it up there, slapped the Virgin name on it, and they had a, like I was talking about that earlier, right? They had a whole service, right? You get on a Virgin orbital flight on Spaceship 3. You go to your Virgin hotel and...
I'm smirking because my understanding was that for the grand opening for the Virgin Hotel in Chicago, that people could use, I think it was UberX, which actually had Teslas drop them off there, which then, if just extrapolating for a second, means that if you had a Virgin Hotel, in theory, you could maybe have a Dragon capsule get you there.
Well, I suppose you could. You totally could. So just drop you off.
That was the thought process.
So yeah, totally something I think that could be possible, you know, in the distant future.
Sure.
Though. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving along.
This one comes from Mars Colony 2025.
I like that username.
Very nice. At tomorrow at Pomerantz. As satellites are getting smaller and smaller, are the big launchers going to become obsolete or infrequent?
I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a market segmentation where you've got the smaller launchers that are doing some of the smaller payloads, some of the CubeSats, microsats, things like that. Big launchers will still be needed, and I think actually we're going to end up using more big launchers because we want to do bigger, badder things in space. For example, launching that Virgin Hotel. We want to be able to send humans up there. All of those things, you know, going to Mars, all of those things require really big launchers, even bigger than what we have today. And there will still be large satellites as well. So
I think it's just like anything. You know, you make a bigger car, but not everyone needs a bigger car. Sometimes you just want a small car. Sometimes you need that medium car. Sometimes your family grows a little bit. Now you need a stupid minivan.
A stupid minivan.
But the point is that I think just because you can make a bigger one or you can make a smaller one, it's not going to be appropriate for every single thing that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I don't think it's going to steal from one or the other. It's just that now we're serving a new market.
Yes, exactly.
All right, moving on.
This one comes from Novateco. Hashtag tomorrow, 8.09, my apologies to Virgin Galactic, but I don't count suborbital flight as, quote, being to space.
Yeah, I do. Well, yeah, suborbital flight, there is that 100-kilometer line.
I sort of feel like this being to space line is more debated, hotly debated, than Moon or Mars first.
Yeah, for the right,
Sincerely.
because it's hard, right? Because we had the line in the 50s and 60s, which was 50 miles, 40 miles, something like that. 50 miles, I think it was, which is not as high as the 100-kilometer line. So any of the space planes that crossed that line, those were astronauts. And those pilots got their astronaut wings. But, you know, they earned them. Those were dangerous vehicles. They were testing stuff, right?
Yeah.
So then you go, okay, well, no, the boundary's more like this 100-kilometer line. And then a lot of the people are like, yeah, but there's still wisps of atmosphere out there. Although, for the record, barely. right? So, I mean, if you open the door, you're dead. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I feel like if you open the door, you're dead, you're probably in space.
Right.
You open the door on an airplane, you'll have explosive decompression, you'll still need oxygen, but you can still kind of get down and survive. You open the door on a space plane at its apogee, you're dead, right? So, there you go. I think that's...
Now we know where Ben stands.
That's where I stand. But there are other people who are like, no, it's like 2/3 of the way to the moon or something ridiculous like that. That's when space actually begins because there are no wisps of atmosphere anymore. It's just, I don't remember what the real distance is. I don't know what the line is, but
so if you still have hairs to comb over, you're not.
Oh, Space Mike. Space Mike's holding up his hand. What do you think, Space Mike?
Well, assuming that the Kármán line, that 100-kilometer up is the boundary of space, those suborbital flights, just like on the X-15s back in the 60s, count as being in space. And any pilots or even passengers that go past that line, one of the selling points for Virgin Galactic is that they get their astronaut wings. And I'm not sure what...
but they didn't, that's the thing. They didn't make it...
is awarding that.
They didn't make it that high. They only made it to 50 miles. So they didn't actually make it all the way to the 100-kilometer line. And, dirty little secret, neither is Spaceship Two. Right now, Spaceship Two does not make it all the way to the 100-kilometer mark. It's just under
That's why they switched the engine development.
So, you know, maybe at first they may get past it, right?
Right.
Who cares? I mean, this is such a stupid way. Look, you can see the curvature of the Earth. You can see the curvature of the Earth from a balloon. So, a balloon is 1/3 of the way to that line, and people think that's space.
Right.
So, yeah, there you go. All right, moving on.
All right. See this. This one comes from XX Wilder Gamer XX.
Hi, Space Mike. I had a feeling that was going to happen. It was amazing. This is a great show, technically. All right.
Wow.
Do it again.
It says, please talk about Mars One being a scam this week.
No. So I don't buy it for a minute. There was an article that came out that said, basically, I'm one of the Mars 100. Sure. And, you know, these are all the reasons that they're not making it to Mars. It was obviously written in such a way that wanted you to believe that Mars One was a scam. I don't believe Mars One is a scam. I don't believe that Mars One has all of the data necessary for them to make it at Mars, and based on what I have seen, I don't believe they're going to make it in 10 years. I don't believe it's a scam. I don't think that they're trying to deceive people. I think he legitimately is trying to make it to Mars. I also think he's finding out it's way, way, way harder than he originally thought it was as well. So,
isn't there some sort of quote that I think it's Diamandis, I don't remember who said it, or maybe he just repeats it often, but something along the lines about how it's not a break, it's only crazy until it works kind of thing. Like, it's crazy up until the point that you have that breakthrough and then it works.
Yeah, exactly.
There's I forget exactly what the quote is. Somebody, I'm sure, will correct me on that one. But yeah, he's just trying a different route. Sure. Right? He's maybe they are coming across the idea that yes, this is way harder than we thought it was, and you know there are all these different stumbling blocks, and there's all these things that we didn't think of before, et cetera, et cetera. But we have to give credit where credit's due. Nobody else is trying to do it in this particular way.
At least they're trying. They're trying something.
They're trying something. And yeah, man.
So you can get passionate about it, and you can say, no, it will never work. But, you know, they said that about SpaceX, too.
Pretty much.
So it only won't work until it won't work anymore, and then maybe it will work. I'm not saying it will work, by the way.
No, but
I'm not convinced it will, and I'm not sitting here going, Mars One is the future.
And the other thing
I actually am very apprehensive. I really don't think they have their ducks in a row here. But
yeah,
it's not a scam. I would not call it a scam.
No, I don't think in any way, shape, or form was it ever intended to be a scam. Like, whether or not it works is one thing. Whether or not, you know, it kind of gets halfway there is a different thing. But there was no sort of pyramid scheme functionality to the entire process. It wasn't set up in that way.
Nathan in the chat room says, some of us will trip and fall, but at least some of us are trying.
Yeah.
You know what? And I think we should give Mars One the benefit of at least they're trying something and bringing awareness to humans going to space. And they're getting publicity. And maybe that's all they'll ever be, is just a publicity arm for Mars and never actually make it to Mars. But the publicity for humans going to space has been pretty good thus far. Yeah. And it's kind of opened up some conversations, and I think that is good. What would be very bad is if they actually tried to go to Mars and they killed everyone on their way there. That could set us back very, very far. So I'm like I said, I'm apprehensive, but you know, maybe we'll see. All right, moving along.
This one comes from YouTube. Neosis? I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Okay. Once again, great interview. I have to be honest. I was skeptical of the larger focus on interviews for this season. I enjoyed them in the past, but always saw them as kind of an extra, not the main meat of the show.
Yeah, and actually what I think we're going to start doing is, as we bring on more Space Pod correspondents, my plan is to bring the Space Pods up to 5. It's happening way faster than I thought it was going to, by the way. I thought this was going to happen over the course of the year, and it's happening over the course of basically a month. Just because that's how the cards fell, and I didn't expect it, but I was like, all right, well, let's just run with it. So because we're going to have so many Space Pods, I see little reason to have space news in the live show anymore. The thing with the live show, and the whole community is cringing right now, I know you guys like space news, but space news is a one-way, we're telling you what's happening medium. It doesn't belong in a live, two-way interactive live show where we're talking about comments, we're having conversations, you can ask guests questions. So what I would like to try doing, I'm not saying that we'll stick this way, and it's not going to happen right now, but what I'd like to do is offload the news onto the Space Pods, have the Space Pods give you the news faster, you can go more in depth with the topics that you want to hear about, yeah, so that will be that. And then on the live shows, it will just be the interview and viewer comments. I have not figured out how to deal with viewer comments from Space Pods. That's Mike's problem. So Mike, by the way, is our Space Pod ambassador. He's the one coordinating all of this stuff. So all of the correspondence we're bringing on board, all of the look and feel, all of the making sure that it works, that's on him. So he's been doing a fantastic job of doing that. And a huge thank you to, I know he's doing one of these right now. So a huge thank you to Space Mike for making all of that work, because it has been going very, very well. Yeah, already, I can see the delayed chat room getting to the me talking about removing space news. It makes sense when you think about it, right?
Yeah, but we've always said that if there's breaking news, that we would bring that.
Oh, certainly.
Into the show
breaking news belongs in the live show. And you know, we may not kill all. I don't know. Here's the answer. I don't know. I keep playing with the show format, and we're going to forever play with the show format. That's what we do. Let's just have fun with it, right? If you guys as a community don't like it, give it some time. But if you don't like it, we'll change it. We'll fix it, right? We'll make it happen. We're here for you. We'll do what you want. All right, last one.
Comes from Bobbert for him. Is anybody taking seriously the concept of recovering space debris? After all, there are literally tons of space junk that are already purified copper, titanium, iron, etc. Wouldn't it be sensible to develop a system that somehow collects these materials for recycling?
Nope. All right, that's our show. No, it's actually very, very difficult to do. It sounds like it's easy, but the velocities involved are very hard to work with. And remember, in space, things work differently, action-reaction kind of stuff. So, you know, it's exceedingly difficult to deal with space debris. Not to say it's impossible, but collecting it and certainly bringing it back down here to Earth for something to use, that I don't see actually happening. Now, collecting it and using it for something on orbit, maybe, but again, this stuff is really, really hard. Really, really difficult. You'd probably be better served going to an asteroid or something out in near space to collect it from there and work with the materials you need there than you would be to try to deal with this debris that could be a little itty-bitty thing zipping around at 17,500 miles an hour or 22,000 miles an hour. They could just rip right through your spacecraft. Yeah. So it's exceedingly difficult to do. All right. That's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. We'll be back next week with another live show. Should be a lot of fun for those of you watching live, or if you're a Patreon Plus subscriber, After Dark is up next. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I don't know why I'm saying that. See you next week. Show! Show! This was a show! I made a mess. Would you mind giving me a towel? And welcome to tomorrow, episode 8.10 for Saturday, February... Nope. And welcome to tomorrow, episode 8.10 for Saturday, March 28th. Correct?
That was a space launch.
And then a launch.
And then a launch?
There's another launch.
Then,
Would you let Mike talk, please?
SOYUZ launch. Space Mike, take us away. And we'll try that one more time. The next, oh, hang on. I'll do this all nice. The next space, did you lose the board, Detta?
I've got no audio from Space Line.
Test.
Aha.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. And I'll have to remember to do that edit. I'll wave my arms. All right. And the next space launch, Space Mike, take it away. I did that, then you'll go.
So the next